Welcome to the European Education Leadership Week, and today we are celebrating the International Day of Digital Learning. And because of that reason, most of our webinars today are dedicated to this theme. We just finished before the break. We just finished one of those webinars on generative artificial intelligence and its possible use in the field of education that was led by the European School Heads Association. And right now we are going to experience a very interesting discussion. A discussion about the use of educational technologies in formal education provision, meaning schools, and well, let's see it, because it's actually quite interesting, because currently the two ecosystems, the schools, the education, and the educational technologies, they actually work in very separate ecosystems. So today we'll try to bring them together, to bring the two perspectives together, to see whether a cooperation is actually possible, and if so, in what sense, to what extent. And I'm here today with excellent speakers. We will start first of all with a presentation of a case study. We're going to go to Ireland. Ireland is I think one of those places where you do not have to really convince anyone about the use of digital technologies. So we have with us two colleagues from Ireland, Gemma Cooper and John McGovern. Gemma Cooper is from Kinsale Community School, and she is indeed responsible in that school for the use of educational technologies in the classroom. And John McGovern is a representative of the Teacher Union of Ireland, who is the representative of the teachers in that country, who is also an expert in that field and will also share with us his thoughts. So after they actually kick it off, they set a scene for our discussion. We're going to have a second part of this webinar that will be focusing on a debate. And in that debate, we will have Henrik Blomgren from Sweden, who is an expert, an author on the use of educational technologies in the school, in the education. We have with us Lena Pontinen, who is a director for Skills, Competences, Technologies, Industries of Finland. We have Donatella Solda from European EdTech Alliance. And we also have with us Dora Palfi from Imagi. But before we start our discussion, I wanted to maybe come back to Ireland to present this particular case study. So I'm going to, first of all, invite Gemma Cooper for sharing her practice. So Gemma, how is it that you're using educational technologies in the classroom? To what extent it is possible?
Hi, Daniel. It's lovely to meet everyone here this afternoon. If I may share a presentation, and I will work my way through just to explain how we are utilising technologies and collaborating with EdTech, that would be great. So at Kinsale Community School, we are a non-selective school in County Cork in Ireland that currently have 1,478 students on a roll, ranging between 12 and 18 years of age, if not 19. And we are dedicated to fostering a well-rounded, engaged, informed individuals who can access a breadth and depth of both academia and holistic education, where all the rights of our students at Kinsale Community School are safeguarded around 4 rights, which are the right to be happy, the right to be different, the right to learn, and the right to be heard. And what we aim to cater for are the curricular and personal and physical needs of each student in a safe and caring environment. Kinsale Community School is very much dedicated to providing an outstanding education for the diverse needs of all our students in our local community. And there are many, many diverse needs that we need to cater for. I always put teaching, and I am a teacher also in the classroom of maths and computer science, as my classroom is a blank canvas, and what it starts with is there are diverse species of plant, if I make that analogy, that each require the right tool in the garden to nurture their growth and enable them to thrive. So just as you have your garden with a diverse range of species and tools, it is exactly the same for the diverse students that we have within our school, that we select the right EdTech tools to meet their needs. In curriculum planning, we select the appropriate EdTech resources suited to the needs of our schools, such as interactive software, online resources, digital platforms, to create dynamic and engaging lessons tailored to the diverse learning styles, and align technology with the curriculum objectives to foster critical thinking, creativity, collaboration amongst learners, and preparing them for success in a rapidly evolving digital world. EdTech enabled curriculum enables planning for personalised learning experience, allowing to cater for individual learning needs and interests, and support student agencies and ultimately promote to be deeper understanding and retention of content. Now, while I am involved in the ICT working group, there are a team of us, because there are so much that you need to consider, and it's narrowing it down and selecting it and starting slowly so that we can embed it carefully within our school. We evaluate EdTech tools to meet the needs of our student and don't implement them for the sake of implementing them. We co-construct our EdTech tools, so we liaise carefully with the different EdTech companies, and we develop these tools to suit the needs of our schools involved in alpha and beta testing to meet and build the software that matches our requirements more carefully. We provide professional development and support to educators, learners, parents and guardians regarding the use of these EdTech tools, which is very important, and looking at the digital media literacy throughout the curriculum, our infrastructure, our data privacy and security, and our policies and procedures. When planning for our EdTech tools and use of technology, it's very much a journey, and we need to plan carefully for this journey. We don't follow the route, I suppose, unguided. We are looking at to where we are going in the future, and it has been a journey. In 2017, the inspectorate reported that we had no virtual learning environment. So then we moved on to adopting Microsoft 365 as our virtual learning environment within the school. And what we did in 2019 is we embedded this and we promoted staff collaboration using Microsoft 365 and the different tools. And we had digital leaders. So it was the teachers in the school who were interested in this that supported the other teachers within the school. We introduced in the curriculum junior cycle digital media literacy and coding as a starting point and getting the students on the journey to become digitally literate that they're required to be today. In 2020, staff were provided with devices and we upgraded our school infrastructure, becoming also a Microsoft Showcase school. We were very well placed during COVID to provide our students with learning during lockdown. In 2021, the inspectorate found our remote teaching to be outstanding, and we also introduced Leaving Certificate Computer Science as a subject, having built on what we had at junior cycle being DML and coding. And we were awarded a Centre of Excellence in our embedding of teaching and learning to support the students. Again, we became, due to our testing, we became a Centre of Excellence. But very much so what we are focused on is looking to the future, is seeing what is there and how it meets the needs of our students. So it's always planning and looking to the future to make sure we meet the needs. There is such a vast array of educational tools and resources today, which allows us to supplement our lessons with engaging materials. But more importantly, it's to support our students and their needs and supplement traditional classroom instruction, offering additional explorations examples. Again, you can see here we have different tools such as Athena Tracker, which is our academic tracking. We introduced Compass, which is a management information for communicating with parents, looking at attendance and reporting. We have Office 365 as our virtual learning environment. We use Teams for collaboration and communication. And then we have Microsoft to train our teachers and students as they wish to upskill, but we really do that in-house ourselves. Again, you can see there Compass is the web-based management system. And as I said, we just don't take software off the shelf. Again, if something doesn't work for us, we are very cognizant of that. And we will play something aside and say it's not working, as happened to us with our MIS, and we have taken on Compass because it suits our needs better. And we also work with this company to co-construct and make it work in a way that is suited to the needs of our school and build the software that way. There are many tools. We use Class Notebook, which is great in that it is like a whiteboard. As a teacher, traditionally, I suppose I had chalk and a blackboard, and the teacher wiped everything out at the end of the day. At the end here, the student can access everything online, all their notes, and this supports them. You have tools built into it, such as Reflect, Forms, which give instant feedback. There's Maths Assist. Again, because of the amount of students we have in our students that are coming from a diverse range of countries, Microsoft Translate has been excellent in helping to bridge communication gaps and look at modern language students that help them speak fluency. You have there to help with your conversation, one-on-one chats, and translating work, which has been really useful for assessments, whereby we can now change and translate any assessments that we have in Word to the language of the student that they need to help them with their assessment, and also for proofing language. Tools such as EdTech have also been good from a social and emotional point of view. We have a tool that we use called Reflect that basically helps get a great picture of understanding within the classroom. How are they understanding a topic? But also, if I have 27 students sitting in front of me for the day and I'm teaching them my topic, it's great to do a check-in. And it's great for identifying if a student is putting a feeling whereby they were saying they're enthusiastic every day, that's great. But there may be that one student, and from this emotional check-in, I'm feeling that they're feeling sad, lonely, frustrated. I know despite teaching them what I am teaching them, I'm getting this check-in at the end of the day, which is invaluable because I know there's something going on with this student and I need to check in with them, which we have found to be a great tool because it uncovers other things that are going on. We are mindful of accessibility and inclusivity, where you have your text-to-speech, dictation, translator, your automatic captions and transcript, and your screen readers. And these EdTech tools that we've used address the barriers to education to meet the diverse needs. We look at a blended approach towards curriculum and certification, giving students agency to make decisions about their own learning, differentiating more consistently effective in the classroom. And these tools help meet the needs of every student. And there are so many, but as I said, just like your garden, you can't use all of these. You have to look at what plants you have in your garden and which of these tools are going to meet the needs of those specific students. So we're partnering with the students then to begin personalized learning paths for the students, helping unlock the potential of every student. So we have students that will then gain, as well as what we're doing in the curriculum, we're looking at certifications whereby they can earn globally recognized certification, which is evidence of real world skills, and it helps them to stand out, gain confidence, and evaluate their skills and abilities while showcasing their commitment to keeping up with technology. So they will have Word, PowerPoint, Excel. We look at Teams, and we have students that we do not want to limit within the curriculum. So we give them opportunity to explore the Azure fundamentals where they learn about AI, cybersecurity, and they go on. So they're not limited just by what we give them in the classroom. We put them on these learning pathways so that they can learn more if they wish to do so without outside the walls of the classroom, and we actively seek these opportunities. So we look at Cisco, we look at Microsoft, we look at all the different means there are for them to get these micro-credentials. Also, we enter our students into competitions, and you can see a range of them there, such as VEX Robotics, the BT Young Scientists, BA-Rebus, WebWise, the Microsoft Four Nations. And these competitions and collaborating with EdTech here give our students the opportunity to develop their soft skills of problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, and effective communication. We're also mindful of equity and access, and we ensure that the EdTech initiatives that we use are designed with the learner's needs and preferences in mind, with careful consideration to accessibility and equity, and providing alternative options without, your students without reliable internet accesses and devices. So in Kinsale, we never put an onus on students to each own a device and buy a laptop. And many students use their phones as a primary means. And we plan the selection of the EdTech tools as per the diverse needs to ensure that there is equity and that no student is left behind and that they all have access to these EdTech tools that they are being used. But most importantly, I use the analogy as a gardener and a gardener, but you must Maslow before you bloom. And while technology in education is akin to gardener's tool in a flourishing garden, just as these tools assist in cultivating and nurturing the plants, technology facilitates by learning, by providing access to resources, information, and interactive experiences. However, it's the teacher or the gardener's expertise, care, and dedication that breathe life into the garden, fostering growth. And it's the human element, the educator's passion, warmth, expertise and ability to connect with the students that embodies learning with depth, understanding, inspiration, and it's that turns the EdTech tools into an enriching educational experience. And that is what allows the classroom change from a blank canvas or a blank landscape to a flourishing garden. And it's with the teacher and the human element to it, and using and matching the EdTech tools with this, that helps this garden and these students grow within our classroom. It is a journey, and we have to plan carefully for this journey. We start the journey by looking at what we have, and we're planning the landscape with what the class list I get at the beginning of a year. I sit down and I plan, and I use, and every teacher, and this is what we do in our digital strategy in the school, is we look and we plan with the students that we have in front of us. And from there, we select the tools. It's not just the tools. We look at alternatives. What else are there? We attend conferences such as BET. We are always looking to the future and what is out there to meet the needs of our students best. But as I said, you must Maslow before you bloom in that garden. And we have to meet the needs of our students, the basic needs. And it's before we can do anything else, we have to meet those needs. And it's those human interactions. And that interaction between the teachers, their students, and everybody else in the school community, and the tools that we have in hand. And when we all work together, and we work very closely with EdTech to make sure that the tools that are available to us work for our students' needs and us as teachers in the classroom. And it's from there, and I have the blossom, because it's that time of year where the blossoms begin to flourish, that our students can grow, and us actually as educators, we can grow too, because we are learning so much. But it is our duty as educators to keep our eyes wide open and see what's coming next, and look to the future and plan carefully to ensure that the tools we select and the EdTech that we link in meet the needs of our students. So thank you very much for joining me today on our collaboration journey with EdTech at Kinsale Community School.
Thank you very much, Gemma, for this very inspirational talk. I'm quite overwhelmed by the number of initiatives and tools that you're using. I know we were not supposed to be asking questions yet, but I really want to ask you a question about this. How did you really come up with this vision as a school community? To what extent students and parents were involved, and teachers were involved in building this up? Because I think that having such a comprehensive approach to the use of educational technologies really shows that there must have been a certain cooperation, and also the key message that you are kind of telling us here is that educational technologies are tools, and we need to be on this journey. But ultimately, what we want is to make sure that the learning is actually enhanced by the tools, and we just don't use the tools for the sake of using them. So how was the school really building this vision, or is this a trial and error? What was the methodology of it?
You have to, well, what we have done is, I suppose, we're very much with our student voice. So we listen to where we're at. So you start off and we assess, and you question. So you find out from the teachers where they're at, where the students are at, where the parents are at, and that's your starting point. Where are we at right now? And then it's very carefully planning. That's what we have done. Where do we go from there? So what we learned is, while you can try and jump into everything, you can't. You have to take the journey one step at a time. So our first step, as teachers, you always had your students, and this was prior to technology, and you met their needs, and how do you teach them best? But now you have EdTech in the mix with this. So we decided, well, where will we start? So that's where we took on 365 as our platform, and we started slowly to see how it worked. So that's why we have a committee, and the committee, we very much explore and investigate, and we trial it first to see what works before rolling it out to whole staff, because you need consistency as much as you can with the major, with your communications, with your policy, so that you're not going in and it's very different. So we started slowly, step by step. And then as we have a group, we kind of look at, well, what will work, what won't work, and we knock it against one another. But we get feedback. Nothing is possible without feedback.
It looks like using design thinking to me, with everybody involved. So thank you very much for that, Gemma. It's really inspirational, and I think even in the introductory words, I was mentioning that Ireland is one of those places that you don't really have to convince many people to use this kind of technologies, and it's a very innovative approach to education. So thank you very much for showing us how this could actually look like in the context of a school. Now we are moving to John McGowan. John is a representative of the Teacher Union of Ireland, so he's here to represent the teacher's voice. And well, I could say and I could suspect that probably there could be certain resistance or there could be certain challenges related to the use of educational technologies by the teachers. So the question for John is, how can we support the teachers to be able to use educational technologies? Or another question, can educational technologies support the teaching in general? What are your views on this, John?
Thank you very much, Daniel. Well, what I suppose, to follow on from what Gemma said, just for a little bit of context, Kinsale Community School is an extraordinarily good school, and it is exceptional in relation to the extent to which it has embraced and is effectively using EdTech. The majority of schools in Ireland are not in a similar position. They may get to that position, but they're not there yet. And some are a very long way from being as advanced in respect of EdTech as is Kinsale. So what we're looking at in the Teachers Union of Ireland and in the other teacher unions is how best to use EdTech, the conditions for safe connection between EdTech and schools. And the assumption upon which all of this is based is that EdTech will become more prevalent, will become, if you like, will be used more extensively as time goes on. And indeed, that the extensification of use is accelerating, not least because of the impact already and the likely huge impact as time goes along of generative artificial intelligence. So just by way of context or of economic context in Ireland. Ireland is a small country, 5 million people in the Republic of Ireland, 1.5 million in Northern Ireland. It is a relatively homogenous country insofar as there's very little polarisation right and left. And economically, Ireland has been a very major beneficiary of foreign direct investment. And in the foreign direct investment, there's a very significant big tech presence. Dublin has become data protection central, even in European terms, and the number of cases taken by our data commissioners is indicative of that. So that both shows the manner in which we have developed our economy and some of the threat that comes with that development, or the challenge. Our tax revenues are enormously inflated by, and therefore, I suppose, compromised by corporation tax, with a huge concentration of the taxation coming from a small number of big tech companies, including EdTech companies and pharma companies. We have used corporation tax rates to bring in this foreign direct investment, but it does make government susceptible to lobbying by big tech. Now, EdTech is already a significant presence, and so this is an absolute given. It's extensively used in education and in educational settings already, both in every classroom, laboratory, workshop, in every school bag. The phones that Gemma refers to, for example, also in backroom functions, in registration, admissions, attendance, payroll systems, assessment processes. There are very many existing connections between EdTech and individual schools and colleges. So there is endowment of some schools, not of many, but of some, by big tech. Intel, for example, endows a number of schools in the proximity of its headquarters outside Dublin. There's sponsorship of competitions, and Gemma mentioned the BT Young Scientist competition, which is enormously important and has huge profile in the Irish context. But there is also lobbying in the public space in relation to curriculum and strategic direction by companies, by the big tech companies, and through employer federations and the American Chamber, for example, American Chamber of Commerce. And that is not necessarily a risk, but it can be. And at third level, there are obvious strategic alliances between EdTech and various higher education institutions. There are also, in every school, there are long-standing loyalties to particular educational publishers, which increasingly are moving into the EdTech area themselves through ebooks and so forth. So as educators and advocates for high-quality public education, I suppose, on one hand, we know more about EdTech than we suspect we know, but we also know less than we will need to know as time goes on, given the accelerated development of EdTech. So EdTech works where there's a mutuality of interest. And to enable mutuality, to be frank about it, there has to be infrastructure. Again, you can't have the absence of coverage and of connectivity that blighted some of the experience of students during the pandemic. Therefore, there is a requirement in the first instance for state and government to invest appropriately to ensure connectivity and coverage, and to avoid creating and or exacerbating the digital divide. Then you use EdTech where and to the extent that it's educationally appropriate, a point that was made on a number of occasions by Gemma, to complement teaching and learning. And you focus on the EdTech that best serves a high quality, free public education system. And high quality is important there, but free is of fundamental importance. And in the Irish context, that would be a sine qua non of our demand list. You also then have to ensure that you're adding educational value, not simply engaging with gadgetry. And you add educational value, I think you can use barometers such as equality and equity to see whether or not this is happening. There needs to be an environment in which there is benefit derived from the use of EdTech. And again, Gemma has described the sort of environment or the ecosystem that has been created in Kinsale so that benefit is derived. And it depends on meaningful engagement with teacher unions. I would obviously say that, but without us, it won't happen. And teachers, and it can't be just a function that is exercised in the top offices. It can't just be between departments of state, EdTech, financial managers. You have to involve the people who will be using these tools. And you therefore need a genuinely collaborative culture, both at local and national levels. And it must be led by educational considerations rather than financial ones. So you don't buy the cheapest EdTech because it's cheapest. You have to see whether that cheap EdTech, not mind you that there's much of it, is educationally valid. It is absolutely not appropriate, and we wouldn't allow that EdTech becomes a quick fix for the teacher supply crisis. The teacher supply crisis has roots that need to be identified, and it also has solutions that need to be long-term. Now, the point I'm going to make most is that all of this is all in the context that I am accepting of the fact that EdTech not alone is there, but that more of it will be needed. But you have to rigorously risk assess it. And I'm moving, I suppose, to the national as opposed to the local to a degree when I say this. And there has to be regulation because there is uncertainty about the trajectory this is going to take. We know there'll be more of it, but the nature of it is not necessarily certain. Therefore, prudence is appropriate. So
John,
beneficial.
Just a comment, because I'm aware that your presentation has around 13 slides, and we started late. So if I may ask you to try to conclude your intervention within the next 5 minutes, I would really appreciate it, because
I will of course do that, and I will of course, Daniel, and I was made aware of that before I started, I think. So the reminder was not necessary. The beneficial usage, that is a potential, it's not guaranteed. But where it can be used, very obviously, is for student learning, to enhance student learning. And I list a number of the possibilities there, and it's not an exhaustive list. For teachers and teaching, there is the potential, but not the guarantee of benefit. And for school management, there is the potential, but not the guarantee. Just in an Irish context, we have a lot of small, remote schools, some of them on islands. They offer a limited curriculum because of size considerations. EdTech has huge potential there. We have Irish language medium schools which struggle to get mother tongue materials, and we have a huge proportion of students in some schools whose mother tongue is not English. EdTech can help, and it can obviously be a supplement in times of crisis. Now, how do you risk assess it? Well, you realize what it is you're risk assessing. EdTech necessarily is profit driven. Its aim is to sell and to advertise. It's also an attritional market. Startups are vulnerable to being devoured by the big players. And I suppose one of the risks is that you have an oligopoly in terms of the market here, driven by a few dominant transnational companies, which are, quite frankly, in many instances, very oppositional in their attitude to government or to regulation. There is also an absence of affordable redress and local redress. You obviously have to go to another jurisdiction if you're to seek legal redress, and that's extremely difficult if things go wrong. There is a dilution possible of national competence in education, and this is evidenced by the experience in African countries of the bridge academies. And under TTIP, which has gone underground but hasn't gone away, there is a desire that education will become a tradable commodity more than it is, and pass from national competence. So when things go wrong, just think of Fujitsu and the Royal Mail, there tends to be a contempt for justice and the common good. That all leads me to the conclusion that procurement is a huge issue that must remain within the national competence, that requires national oversight. And the stakes become much higher when you introduce considerations of generative AI. Who designs the algorithm? Will we have algorithmic justice? And who vets it for inherent biases? So is it intended to assist and complement teaching, or to replace and displace teachers? These are open questions at the moment, and there are different views. We have a very clear view that it can't be used for replacement or displacement. So we want to protect the social contract, public education, the common good. And that means teachers must have professional control. And that is best exercised, in our view, through the unions. Choice, design, procurement, appropriate deployment is a matter, therefore, for social dialogue and collective bargaining where need be. And this requires a critical national engagement before decisions are made, and before software products in particular are licensed. So we need to know what's embedded. We need to know what it is that EdTech sees in education for it, and to see what is in EdTech for public education. And just employing the old adage of caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, we must have due diligence. We cannot allow dependency to be fostered. It makes business sense, it doesn't make educational sense. The fundamental motivations are different. Schools operate to the social contract, and companies necessarily operate to the profit motive and for shareholders. That's not a moral condemnation, that's a statement of the obvious. So education needs to define appropriate points of convergence. Not all points of convergence are appropriate. And before committing public funds, there must be risk assessment and due diligence. What does that require? Well, it requires the social dialogue I've spoken of, but a clear separation also between EdTech and school governance or school ownership. There must be a regulatory regime with contractual guardrails to prevent dependency or addiction, a sort of OxyContin effect. We'll cause you pain, and then we will give you the paid for means of relieving pain. There has to be a licensing regime before a product enters the market, and guarantees that displacement won't occur, guarantees that there won't be a redirection of scarce public resources away from student support and infrastructure. There has to be a multi-partite engagement by EdTech with the various stakeholders. The maintenance of national competence in respect of curriculum and assessment, which in Ireland is guaranteed statutorily at the moment. The maintenance of teachers' professional autonomy, and in third level context of academic freedom. And protections against intensification and extensification of work, because when computers were first introduced and digitalization, the promise was that it would reduce workload. In the main, it has not done so. It has, in fact, had the opposite effect, obviously. There are obvious things. Privacy and data have to be protected. Intellectual property rights issues remain to be resolved there. And we cannot allow market capture by an oligopoly. There needs to be, I think, a particular focus on quality local EdTech startups, ones that may be more, if you like, willing to engage with local authorities, with schools, to ensure the suitability of product. So there needs to be timely deployment as well of generative intelligence, because it raises the stakes. A validation and regulation process, a bonding arrangement, so that the industry pays for failures rather than that failure falling on the public purse. Penalty clauses and durability built into product, and an ethics audit, a market entry fee, and finally, there needs to be full conformity with child safety and child and learner safety legislation. And there needs to be submission to national law and judicial systems, plus proper training for teachers, and that training not to be the property solely of the EdTech provider. Thanks very much, Daniel.
Thank you, John. It's always great to listen to you, because you always make such a strong statement at the end. Thanks a lot for I think outlining all kinds of risks that could be related to the use of educational technologies. I think we kind of managed to start and build a case here. So we have one school and a representative of that school that is actually, again, has embarked on a path to really include the educational technologies in their curriculum and in the learning process, in the teaching process. On the other hand, we have, well, the colleagues from the teachers' unions who could outline all the possible risks and conditions for the use or effective use of the educational technologies. Now we are moving on to our panel itself, and here, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have 4 speakers. We have Henrik from Sweden, Henrik Blomgren from KTH Royal Institute of Technology. We have Dora Palfi from Imagi, that is an educational technology company. We have Lena Pontinen, Director of Skills, Competences, Technology Industries of Finland, and Donatella Solda from European EdTech Alliance. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation. And after this settings stage, I will be asking you some questions, because as you can see, it is a controversial matter for the representatives of the formal education provision. My first question, it's actually to all of you, but I may start with Henrik. What do you think, Henrik? How can formal education EdTech companies connect? Are we really sentenced to be in 2 different ecosystems, or can we somehow unite? What are the benefits and possible challenges of doing so? We named the number. John named the challenges. Gemma named the potential opportunities. What is your thoughts about this?
Of course we can unite.
Hey, thank you, Henrik. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can. Of course we can. This problem is smaller compared to war in Ukraine or problems in Israel, right? It is. But it's 2 different kind of worlds. Of course it is. It's the business world, and in most countries in Europe, the public world. And I actually don't think it comes down to the juridical differences which exist. I think it's a knowledge problem. It's like, if you imagine you want to have an engineer, I happen to be one, and then you have a business person and you want them to collaborate. What we normally think is put them in the same room and then it's going to work. Of course it's not, because they're not gonna understand each other. What you normally need is some kind of overlapping competence. The overlapping competence is quite weak right now. Could put it bluntly, there are quite a lot of EdTech companies that fail, and I can tell them before they do it why they will. That's partly because they don't understand what John does, how life is being a teacher, for instance. On the other hand, I can see a lot of teachers that will fail already before they do it, simply because they don't understand how business and technology works. So a bit of overlapping competencies, then it would become better in average. And I don't
Donna,
think that was a radical answer.
I can tell to our viewers that we did have a preparatory call. We scheduled it for 45 minutes, and we were talking and in fact fighting with each other for 2 hours. So we cannot do that here online because we have a limit on this webinar. But I wanted to ask the same question. So how can we? What are the opportunities of EdTech? And I'm going to ask this to Donatella. Donatella, what are your thoughts about this? I think we cannot hear you, Donatella. Can you unmute yourself? If there is challenges, maybe we can try to resolve the challenges. And I'm going to move with this question to Dora. Is that okay, Dora from Imagine?
Can you hear me now?
Oh yes, we can hear you, Donatella. So carry on.
I was just sharing the fact that I feel like a minority here because I do represent the industry. However, for your knowledge, we carry the insights from schools and research as we had that experience as well. The points raised and up to now are very relevant. That is the alignment of what are the needs, what are the necessities of a social good like education is, especially formal education. And on the other hand, we have an ecosystem in transition. We don't have books and chairs anymore. We have LMS and any other tools, usually developed in a startup model. Startups are agile. They do a lot of they need to improve their product. So indeed, the experience that educators had up to now is an overflow of information, a lot of inputs about the most successful tool that they could use without having any quality indicators. So the point raised until now is about relevance and intentionality and quality of products. I believe, speaking now from the industry, the EdTech industry point of view, that this is a common ground. Every new proposal, new products, new service for education should have these qualities of being tested, of being relevant, that is answering as something that is really needed, and to be chosen, not used because it's available only. So I strongly believe that this is not oppositional. This is not to be understood as a difference, but it's a common ground for both demand and offer of EdTech.
I think we can all agree that there is certain potential that we certainly need to look into, and this is the question I have for Dora: is how can we really ensure that educational technologies are co-designed with the potential users, meaning the teachers and the students? So you represent the sector here. What are your thoughts on this? How can we really ensure that this co-design process takes place?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I don't know if you can ensure, but you would at least hope that the successful products will be the ones that were co-designed. But I think it's a bit tricky. My product started from a perspective of trying to make something that was really fun and relevant for kids. And then once you realize that you're trying to have it work in an educational use case, you realize you need to work with educators to make sure that it's really delivering value to them and it is catering to their needs. And in our case, I wasn't a teacher myself before, and I totally agree with, in a lot of cases, people develop EdTech without knowing much about what's happening in a classroom. Like, we recognized that gap and brought in a teammate pretty quickly once we decided to focus on education who was a teacher for 7 years, so that we don't just do the testing with teachers, but we do have someone in like the core team who was a teacher. But then I'd say that's still just going to give you a nice product that like works well in the classroom. But then there's all the additional complexities once you are trying to make a business work in EdTech, that you have to sell this product, you have to make this product work for the administrators and the people who decide for the budget. And so if you don't understand what they are looking at in terms of like safety, privacy, like return on investment, then there's another opportunity to fail with the product. So I think, of course, you will only really succeed if you're able to kind of like, make sure kids love it, teachers love it, and then the administrators also love it, or at least approve of it.
I can see. I mean, I think the point that you're making here is that indeed, if a solution is not able to go through all these security checks, go through all this market related checks, like whether the product is enjoyable, whether it's actually delivering the requested the requested outcome, the learning outcome, and it's not enjoyable for both parents, the students, and the teachers, then the product will simply not be able to be sustained on the market. And I think that in a way, this also somehow responds to what John was speaking of all kinds of restrictions and risks related to the use of educational technologies. Now, I wanted to ask Lena about how the educational technologies are being used already. How can they actually enhance learning? I know that Gemma has given us, Gemma from Kinsey, she actually has given us an example of how is it really working. But what is your experience with that? What are your thoughts on the possible use of educational technologies in the school context?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I represent technology industries of Finland, but we do not represent EdTech as such. So I'm gonna answer the questions based on my experience as a teacher, as a principal, as a superintendent. And I think that EdTech plays a crucial role in supporting educators and enhancing the quality of teaching. And it can significantly contribute to teaching quality, empower teachers, enhance students' learning experiences, foster digital literacy. During the COVID time, we could see a digital leap. We could see that we can actually do this. But in the same time, it was nice to see that what was happening in different countries. Of course, we were seeing what happened in Finland, in other countries, but I also had an opportunity to evaluate the distance teaching in Palestine. And it was kind of funny to notice that the problems were exactly the same during the COVID pandemic, whether you were in Palestine or in Finland. And John was mentioning infrastructure. So tools, equipment, first of all, then another thing, internet availability. That was like the two kind of easy solutions. You only need money for that. But the the third and fourth obstacle there was first of all the know-how of the teachers, and secondly the leadership in all the EdTech. And these are not only for money. These need also attitude and kind of values, and like we heard in Gemma's speech, it's happening in some places in a remarkable way, but the problem is that it's not happening everywhere and it's not happening all the time. And whereas in Finland we think about this in a way that we have a very huge autonomy of teachers, we can see this high autonomy also a matter of differentiating the children more than any other thing, because if some teacher decides to use EdTech and another one doesn't, how can we say that the future skills will happen in that each and individual pupil? And that is something that we should also discuss when we not only talk about computers or tools or what's happening in the ICT sector in EdTech. So I would say we have to be aware what's happening everywhere and all the time. Did I answer any of your questions?
I think so indeed. So, I mean, of course, this is so much related to the equality matter, because of course, equipment can be really costly. And one of the questions here in the public, I've seen already an ongoing discussion here over the chat. So we're going to bring this up also to the speakers with our panel. And this will be addressed to Henrik. Henrik, who can bear the cost of this, really? Is there any way that we can ensure equality, let's say, of opportunities, provided that, well, our pupils might be coming from different backgrounds. They could be coming from richer families and poorer families. John, in his speech, he mentioned that indeed Gemma School is one of the best ones. I don't know if this is for privileged children. I'm not sure about that, but certainly it's one of those schools that is well equipped. Now, Henrik, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I've actually answered in the chat my answer to the question on cost. But if you don't mind, I'd like to share a thought concerning quality. I happen to be old enough to remember when we did not have computers. I've actually done physical overhead slides. I remember when PowerPoint came. I remember when the laptop came. I remember when the internet came. And I read books what happened when we got classrooms, when we got teachers, which, by the way, also just is a tool. Like a pen is also a tool to achieve learning, right? And every time that happens, it's messy for a while. That's not unique. The first PowerPoint slides everyone did was terrible. It took us some time to figure out how to do it. And I think if we expect EdTech solution right now to be perfect, then we totally missed how society works and always have worked. So some of the things we have today are really terrible. Some EdTech are worse than if it was not even used. But other parts of it are tremendously good. And the trick, and I guess John has that problem, to find the good stuff compared to the bad stuff and sorting that out. But it's a logical process as such. We should accept it. A teacher who expects an EdTech company to deliver the perfect solution the first thing they do, they don't know what development and change means. So it's a messy process, of course it is. And either we take part of it or we sit and wait before it's going to hit us in the back. And I think we should take part of it. It's natural. So I think we push the word quality up to a level where no one, not even Apple or Amazon or whoever, is perfect in the beginning. That's part of the game. But teachers, if they are involved, can make it better.
Correct. It's all about involving the teachers. So how about we're going to ask this to Donatella? It's like how do you since you're representing here the sector really, and this entire ecosystem that we are indeed very much separate still with. So how would you envision involving the stakeholders in designing this? Is it at all possible? Because of course one thing is to be market driven. And indeed, I think Henrik is right when he says it's like combining fire and water, really. It's combining the private sector and the public sector together with different interests. How can we create a platform for to make sure that the users of it could actually learn what are the benefits of it?
I think that is feasible and even already happening. Not only because in many cases, startups come from former teachers or students. We have students-led or teachers-led innovation. So ideas that become then products or EdTech startups coming straight from students and teachers or people working in the formal education ecosystem, but also more and more there are models of quality validation of EdTech products. In Europe, they go under the name of testbed networks. That is places usually publicly funded, so third parties between producers and users of EdTech solutions. So in the middle, research-based places where teachers can test certain products, developers can refine their ideas so that their services are more aligned to where they will be used. So these places, this kind of research-based and feedback-based places are key because both as I said, need to embrace the transition in a way that makes this shift from known tools, books, chairs, as I said, tables, to a Kahoot or a genially new board before embraced, to be analyzed, tested, improved, and chosen. The key is indeed, as it was mentioned before, technology needs to be used because it's actually improves the teaching or the need of a student, not only because it's available, not only because there are the money from the recovery fund available to be used for digital education. And this is the actual issue. The time that schools usually don't have to use fundings, they are maybe on digital goals.
Yes.
On digital goods, don't have the time to actually analyze, give feedback, test, try, train, and then actually.
Thank you very much for that, Donatella.
May I a very short reflection on what Donatella just said?
1 minute, please.
Okay, I think there's something very strange with Europe. Most of the EdTech tools we have are from United States. Right now we are on Microsoft products. I work at the university, we're going to use Zoom, etc., etc. Things come from Google. What most people in Europe don't know is the following fact. If you run a private school, like Harvard Business School, you don't take any risk. Because if you fuck up the risk, the customer leaves. So Harvard is not the driver for EdTech, will never be, because they are dead scared about losing a customer. But in Europe, we have public schools. If I try a different lecture tomorrow, I'm not going to get fired. I'm still going to get my payment, and the school will survive. So in that sense, it's strange that none of these tools came from Europe. They could have come from Europe. And I think if schools loosen up a bit, that would be nice.
I think that, well, on this point, Henrik, I would not agree with you. I think that the main challenge that we do see here is really related to the fact that I myself as a parent, I would be really scared. I would have to be really long convinced to actually use certain tools.
But you're willing to let your children go to the same teacher tomorrow, and you don't know what the teacher is going to do. So you have trust in somebody already, right? You don't know if she's going to give a fundamentally different lecture tomorrow than she did last year.
That's correct. Henrik, thanks a lot for that. Dora, your final statement here.
Or I was going to react to this a little bit because so I have started Imagi in Sweden actually, but I did not grow up in Sweden, so I didn't know the Swedish education system so well. So when we decided to focus on like the educational part of the business, we actually ended up focusing on the US. And so to your point about like Europe versus US, we have a couple of schools in Sweden who came to us and want to use our product. And I mean, in the US, they also care a lot about privacy, but we've been able to get through because we don't collect any student data. But for example, in Sweden, some cities have easily approved our privacy policy and terms. And then some cities were like, oh, we're using AWS for our backend, but we're actually using the server in Europe. And they were still like, oh, no, you're using an American product, so we cannot approve your tool. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're using Google for Classrooms? You're using Teams? Like, you're also using American products. So how is it a problem that our product's backend is an American tool? So I feel like there's just like some weird, it might be a Swedish case, but I personally experienced how it's really difficult to get some of these things through in Europe. And so that has been a barrier for us, I think. And then on the other hand, I just experienced simply like faster adoption in the US. And I think it's because somehow parents have been a bit more pushy towards adoption of new products. on the other side of the pond. That's at least my experience, that there's more pressure on schools to actually adopt tools. We teach computer science, so to adopt these like new type of tools. And I think because it's kind of a trade-off, right? Like how quickly you can have tools that, I don't know, teach AI and deliver new things versus how good of a quality you can maintain, because obviously new things need to be reviewed constantly. And so if you're not moving fast at like approving new tools, then of course you're not staying sort of like ahead of the curve.
Thank you very much, Dora. What I do see here, is it Lena, would you like to have the final word? Just for 1 minute, really, because we are super delayed.
This is less than 1 minute. I think we don't doubt the teacher's ability to use pedagogy. We don't doubt the tech solutions, kind of. And at least when we come from a country with a very small language area, we can see that maybe one problem is what Henrik was also talking about, that maybe the teachers who go to EdTech to be the ones who invent the EdTech pedagogy, they are not so aware of business. And that is also a problem, that when these things come together, we kind of, it's hard to find quality in this, and also teachers are waiting everything to be so ready when they have that. So there are some cooperation we still have to do with this.
But I can tell you, I happen to be on the bridge of all this. Gemma, I really cannot give you the floor. 1 minute, Gemma, really. It has to be 1 minute, because it's been, in 5 minutes we need to start the next webinar, and I have to say something really smart at the end. So Gemma, 1 minute, please.
Thank you. It was just to come in on that regarding teachers in business. I suppose I come from a business background, and as teachers, you have to look at, ultimately, it's a tool. Selling. Sell me this pen. And that's the first thing you learn, is sell me the pen. And it's not saying this is what we offer, but it's asking what you need, what you want, and it's finding out those needs first. And I think as educators, we have a duty to go to the EdTech and say, this is what we want, this is what we need. And we're not shy in doing this. We have reached out to everyone and saying, this is not fit for purpose because, and just because it's a multinational, whoever the EdTech company is, as educators with a passion for education, it's our duty. We reach out and tell them this is not matching it. And that's kind of an important thing, that you just don't take it. You tell, they're a business, they're selling you something, and you have to say how it's going to match. And that's just, I suppose, looking at it, you can be educated, but you're also business. You look at that side of it too. Sorry, that was just a quick.
Thank you, Gemma. I happen to be lucky enough to be invited to the events as a speaker on both sides of this discussion. As a formal education provider, management organization, on the one hand, I'm also often participating in debates with the other ecosystem from the EdTechs. What I do see is that we still have a lot of work to do in order to fulfill the promise that the educational technologies can actually has made to us, that we can actually rediscover and change and improve learning and the learning outcome. But the thing is that we still have, I think, a lot of things and a lot of work to do when it comes to building a bridge between these two different worlds. And I think this discussion, and I also have been observing discussion in the chat, is actually at the beginning of this adventure. So it was great to see this beginning. It was really great to see this adventure, and I'm really excited about having more events like this, because I truly believe that these two worlds can support each other and they can learn to understand each other. Steve Jobs once said that he created Apple in order to change the way people interact with computers. And we still have to look into the ways for us to even understand each other, to learn how we can encourage the educators to deal with educational technologies. We can still do that, but we are, I think, at the beginning of that adventure and on that path. So thank you very much for all this, for all your contributions, for all your disagreements. I think it was really interactive, really interesting, and let's stay in touch on that. Now, I have a bad news for you. I have actually ripped you off from your break. We have the next webinar in 3 minutes. And we continue talking about digital. We continue talking about the digital tools. We're going to have a specific webinar about literacy and about digital literacy and media literacy. I think, well, it's a topic that is of extraordinary importance, that our children are being exposed to social media, are exposed to information, and yet we still, I think, are learning how to equip our children to be safe in the digital space. It is a webinar that we will start in 3 minutes, I'm afraid, and is led by the European Parents Association. So I do invite you, in case you would like to, in the chat, you will have a link to join that webinar as well, but I'm afraid just in 3 minutes, so you don't have much time for a break. For the time being, thank you very much for participating here and for listening to us. And yes, see you in 3 minutes.